Something's going on with malware this week and we need to talk about it. I've got a handful of examples just from the last few days of either your browser extensions turning into malware, your mobile apps turning into malware, or even your IDE coding extensions turning into malware. These were all legitimate apps that did what they said they were going to do when you downloaded them, and then at some point, they turned into malware. Across these few stories, we have millions of people that had malware on their machine that just a few moments ago, that same piece of code was not malware. This isn't exactly a new pattern, but it's obviously a growing trend and it's really hard to defend against. Because even if you do all of the right things and review something before you install it, it's going to pass that sniff check. And then at some point in the future, its behavior is going to completely change. Let's look at a few of these and look at the dates on every article I pull up. This was 3 days ago. I'm recording this July 11th. I'm a little frustrated that this article is very obviously written entirely by ChatGPT, but we can pull the valuable stuff out here. This one had 18 different browser extensions or marked as trusted in the App Store. They cumulatively had 2.3 million downloads across Chrome and Edge. Hundreds of reviews saying that, yeah, this is good. It does what it says it does. And then if we come down to the heading that I'm talking about today, the malware wasn't there until it was. Sticking with browser extensions. Again, July 6th, just a few days ago. A homie of mine, John Tuckner over at Secure Annex, talked about melodrama turning browsers into request brokers. This is actually even stranger because it's a package that developers can add to their browser extensions to help them monetize their extension. In doing so, effectively turning that browser extension into malware and shooting themselves in the foot, because if they added this package to their extension, they're probably getting removed from the App Store. We'll get into it. Switching to mobile apps, there's this research paper that came out about the Anatsa malware. It's a full device takeover Trojan. And a lot of times when I read these headlines about these kind of banking Trojans, I see like, oh, banking Trojan hits 90,000 users with a fake app. I've covered a lot of stories like this. It's generally like a side-loaded app into Android, not on the official Play Store. It targets like Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia. There was one in Thailand I covered earlier in the year that it was like a government app social engineering campaign. It was a fake government app, basically saying, hey, you got to sideload this app to like do a DMV type thing to drive. And so when I saw this headline, I figured it was going to be something like that. But no, going back to this research paper, when I clicked on the actual research paper, it says North America is the target. This is US and Canada, and it's actually in the Google Play Store. But once again, it was a legitimate app, some sort of like PDF file reader type thing that eventually turned into malware. And then one more example. Again, this is July 8th. This is a few days ago. I'm like, what is going on? This is a ETHcode extension that people installed. It's called ETHcode that was then compromised by someone submitting a pull request to it. So this was like a supply chain attack. The attacker was targeting the users of this extension. They opened a pull request against the code in GitHub. They did a bunch of useful stuff in the code, but they snuck in some malware. So this legitimate extension became malware for its users. All right, let's dive in deeper into each of these. Those are the stories I'm going to cover, but I want to show you exactly what went on in all of them and how to protect against this. So like I said, this article, a little ChatGPT heavy, but we're going to do what we can with it. So the initial one that set this researcher off was this color picker tool in the Chrome web store. A lot of time, Chrome extensions, you can go watch some of my other videos about malicious Chrome extensions. Chrome extensions have very broad permissions sometimes to every website that you visit, every tab that you open. They sometimes have permission to open new tabs on your behalf. And a lot of them need those permissions to do what they say they're going to do. The example I always pick is something like an RSS reader. It's going to need the permission that looks scary when you look at the permissions. It says it's going to be able to access the data on all websites and tabs. Because if you want to invoke that extension on a website that has an RSS feed, it's going to need permission to all of the sites that you go to that might have an RSS feed. So scary permission needed for legitimate purposes. When I say that, you should hear it's useless to tell users to not install extensions with those kinds of permissions. Useless advice. A lot of extensions need those permissions to just operate the way that they legitimately need to. All right, so this is like a color picker, some that or other extension. It had these broad permissions. It had a hijacking mechanism that activates every time you navigate to a new page. So the malicious code that the researcher is calling out here looks at every URL that you visited. This extension is going to check it, and it's going to send the URL that you're currently looking at to its remote attacker server. Then what I'm guessing happens is based on the URL that it sees that you're going to, it has a pile of attacks that it knows that it could give you. So if you're going to Zoom and it knows that it has a fake Zoom update package that it could give you, it could then redirect you to not the legitimate Zoom site, but their fake Zoom site with the malicious update. The problem is this extension worked as a proper color picker for I don't even know how long. It says sometimes years. I don't know how long in each of these extensions examples, but then in some update in the future, and a lot of these things are auto updated, no phishing, no social engineering. Yep, got it. It's like this extension did what it said it was going to do, auto updated, now had this whole like URL, watch your traffic, redirect you to malware. So here's the to-do list from the researcher on what you should do. We're going to go through the list of impacted Chrome extensions that it found that was doing this malicious behavior. This is on Chrome and Edge specifically. So we're going to have to remove that, clear all your browser data, obviously run some sort of malware scan if you fell for like the Zoom update thing. And like, let's just make sure that you don't have any weird extensions installed with big permissions. I know I just said this is useless advice, but if you're not using something and it's got these broad permissions, you might as well remove it, remove the attack surface. All right, so here's the list of different extensions. So let me get it out of the way so you guys can like screenshot this if you want to. I'm going to include the link to this research in the description below. But here you go. This is the full list of extensions that they determined had this malware in it. So we've got like an emoji keyboard. We've got a free weather forecast one, video speed controller, unlock Discord, VPN proxy to unblock Discord anywhere. We have a dark theme, dark reader for Chrome. We got volume, sound booster, unblock TikTok, unlock YouTube VPN, the color picker, as we said, and then just an app called Weather. Those are the Chrome ones. In Edge, a lot of them look and sound similar. Unlock TikTok, volume booster, web sound equalizer, header value, flash player, games emulator. Oh boy, that actually sounds fun. I miss the old flash games. YouTube unblock, search GPT, and unlock Discord. And here's some indicators of compromise. So I'm guessing these are the URLs that they were calling out to with your information, or some of the URLs that maybe they were hosting malware on. So these are just some other indicators that you could check in your logs to see if any of your users were using any of these malicious apps. All right, to stay in browser extension land before we move to the mobile app one or the code IDE. So this one, Secure Annex puts out. If you guys don't follow this blog, Tuckner does a lot of browser extension research. He puts a lot of good stuff out on his blog. Check it out. So this one a little bit different, right? Because it's not like a traditional malware situation. This is developers that are trying to monetize maybe their otherwise unmonetized browser extensions with this include called Mellowtel. It's a library that pays browser extension developers to include itself in that browser extension in exchange for the unused bandwidth of its users. And again, the theme of the video is this could be added by developers to a legitimate extension seamlessly, no notification to the user. This is just an include of a library, doesn't change the functionality of the extension at all. The users, unless they're watching their network traffic, wouldn't even notice that this happened. So one of the sites that they use to illustrate the concept is this extension called Idle Forest. So you're like opting in to like, oh, when my browser is idle, go do something. But then the weird thing that kind of feels a little malware-y is when you enable it, it doesn't do anything for a long time. As John points out here, this is generally to avoid some sort of behavioral alarm of, oh, I just installed this extension. Maybe someone is reviewing the behavior of this extension right now because they just installed it. So maybe they do have the developer tools open in their browser and they are looking at the network tab to see what calls this thing is making. I know that was part of my team's responsibilities at the past couple jobs I've had. Someone at the company wanted to install a new extension into their browser. The security team needed to review it. So we would install it, check the permissions, see what it behaved like, whatever. So what this is doing is being installed and saying, yep, it's installed, and then not doing anything for a long time. There's like a delay that's built in, but then eventually it activates, creates a WebSocket channel with an AWS Lambda function, and then sending some device information about your device, location, bandwidth available, status, whatever it is. I'll include all these links in the description if you want to read through the code and see what they found as they were reverse engineering this. But then what it does is it loads an iframe invisibly and starts visiting websites. So if you're currently browsing Facebook or whatever, it's going to inject a hidden iframe and then start visiting this websites that the server that it reached out to said, hey, here's a list of websites that I want you to go to. And what it's doing is actually web scraping these things. So the service worker is going to parse the website that it loaded in a hidden iframe on your browser and then package some information back up and ship it back home. As this research points out, this would break a lot of common protections that are built into your browser or the websites that you're visiting. Things like content security policy or X-frame options. These are things that websites you visit are going to set in your browser. Content security policy is going to say, hey, this website can only call out to this list of domains, basically stopping things like cross-site scripting, which is going to say, oh, I'm going to reach out to this website, pull in some malicious JavaScript, steal some information. Content security policy stops that. But this isn't a cross-site scripting vulnerability we're talking about. This is a browser extension. So the code being run by Mellowtel is in your browser. So it has permission to strip these things. The library dynamically modifies rules, and they will remove security headers from web server responses in order for it to make its request to scrape whatever the website that it's trying to scrape. This research goes one step further beyond the code, starts figuring out who the founders and the employees of this whole Mellowtel system are, and actually finds that they're also behind another company that claims to be the world's most reliable and cost-effective web scraping API. Users of this Olostep tool are going to submit websites that they would scrape to that otherwise maybe have some like bot protection or something like that, or maybe they're blocked from VPNs or data centers. And so they need like real users' browsers to go scrape them. Well, so then someone pays Olostep to scrape the website. Olostep passes that website off to Mellowtel, which has literally a botnet of browser extensions with users that don't even know that they're doing this, and their browsers are used to scrape it and pass it back to Olostep. The problems here should be obvious, right? For users, your browser is doing something you didn't intend it to do. You installed an extension. You had no idea that this whole Mellowtel thing exists. For companies, if you did a security review of a Chrome extension for your users, you approved it, it all of a sudden then had Mellowtel brought into it. Now all of a sudden, a company like Olostep has access to things that your employees might be the only people that have access to. You know, things that like your employees would need to be on network or on VPN to actually get to. Well, now this browser extension is allowing access to those internal sites via your employees' web browsers as kind of a proxy. Not to mention, in order to function, it needs to remove things that are otherwise keeping you, if you're just a user listening to this, or if you're on a security team, your users are being kept safe by things like content security policy that this thing is nuking. All right, moving off of browser extensions for a second, because I just can't believe that this is happening all in the same week, all in the same kind of way, shape, and smell. We've got this mobile app on the Google Play Store, absolutely verified, called Document Viewer File Reader. If we go look at some stats, I don't know how accurate these stats are, but to be estimated from this Sensor Tower site, this app has something like 90,000 downloads. And we've got this Anatsa malware that develops a legitimate extension and developer profile in the App Store, uploads a new app, like a PDF reader in this case, document viewer. They also said they've seen phone cleaners or file managers or some sort of generic tool. Works entirely legitimately. Once it gains substantial user base, often in the tens of thousands, an update is deployed embedding malicious code into the app. These updates are scrutinized way less by the App Store than the initial upload. In Google Play, that initial upload isn't super scrutinized either. You don't see as much malware popping up in the Apple App Store because it takes a lot longer to get an app into the iOS App Store. But even in that case, I'm not sure how much scrutiny updates get, especially after 10,000 plus users. So this new update downloads the Anatsa onto the device as a separate application. And then Anatsa does all the nasty malware stuff like credential theft, key logging, account takeovers, or fully automated fraudulent transactions. I'm guessing if they have that capability with the kinds of financial institutions you do business with or apps that you have installed and logged in. One of the sneaky ways that it does this like whole banking Trojan thing is, okay, it got the malware onto the device via this other previously legitimate app. But then when you actually go to open your banking app, it does this thing where it'll do like an overlay over their banking application. This time it said scheduled maintenance. We're currently enhancing our services and we will have everything back up and running shortly. But really, this is just hiding the malicious activity going on behind the scenes and hoping the users don't call their bank to be like, hey, something weird happened. And then finally, again, I just can't believe it, in the same week, this one is a VS Code extension. It's called ETHcode. You can check it out on the Microsoft Store, the Visual Studio Store. Over 6,000 downloads, so not like the widest used extension ever, but you could tell that this is obviously super targeted at developers in the crypto space, because this is all about Ethereum here. So it's a VS Code extension that helps with Ethereum smart contract development, and it was compromised via GitHub pull request. So who remembers that XZUtils pull request that almost took down the entire internet? I mean, geez, it even has its own Wikipedia page. So this attack, very similar to the XZUtils one, a little bit of a shorter game, and obviously only 6,000 downloads. Some crypto developers, not XZUtils, which is installed in all Linux distros and would have backdoored the entire internet. Still, let's see what happened. The tactic was very, very similar. So we have a GitHub account, a GitHub user that opened a pull request onto this ETHcode GitHub repo. And they were like, hey, I'm here. I'm just doing a whole bunch of modernization. Look at all the helpful stuff I'm doing for you. And this is what happened in XZUtils, just over a much longer game, not just one pull request. There was a developer that was helping the XZUtils developer for months, legitimately helping them. Turns out that was a nation state threat actor that was just gaining trust over months and then snuck in the back door. This one, all in one shot, didn't need the long game. One PR, look at all the helpful stuff I'm going to do. And this is interesting. It's like, hey, look, I added a testing framework for you. I saw you didn't do that. Hey, you were using a couple old versions of things, so I upgraded them. I even fixed a few security flaws for you. I updated things to the most secure version. At first glance, if you reviewed every line of code in this pull request, you would also see that they all looked legitimately helpful, except for one thing. And this is why it was pretty sneaky. So we brought in a new package, and they even named the package on brand with the target. So this was a very targeted attack. So the new package is called Keytherium Utils. They even incremented the versions a few times. So it's not just version, 0.1 or whatever. So if you reviewed every line of code in that PR, it would all look okay. But what they snuck in was this package. So if you didn't go review this package's code, you would have never seen the sneaky thing. So they just added the package to the package.json, required it and instantiated it in some file along the way, actually invoked the dependency. And then even if you did go review the thing, apparently it was obfuscated JavaScript anyway. So these researchers at Reversing Labs had to actually not only find that, but then de-obfuscate the malware. Man, I'm having trouble zooming around on this one to show you it. But basically it opens up a PowerShell curl and then reaches out for a batch file that is its actual malware. So you can see here, the deobfuscated code spawns a hidden PowerShell that downloads and runs a batch script from a public file hosting service. So it's not even like a known malicious domain. It's just another file host that they're hosting their malicious batch script on. We don't have a lot of details of what that batch file actually did in this thing, but you could absolutely take a guess, right? If they were targeting a smart contract developer, there's a lot of malware going around right now, especially in job interview land. I don't know if you guys saw that. I made a video about it where people are putting out fake jobs, interviewing crypto developers, getting them to install some malicious package and then emptying their crypto wallets while they're on the job interview. So you can imagine if this was targeting crypto developers, you got to assume that they probably have crypto wallets themselves, and that's what these people were targeting. So the tips here are obviously, if you're going to review PRs, you have to also review the new dependencies that are being included. So this is traditional supply chain attack type methodology. And it could go deeper than this. They could have gone one level deeper where they included a dependency that was totally legitimate and clean, but then that dependency had a dependency that had malware. I mean, you could see how deep this could get. The other suspicious thing was the GitHub account was created the day that this PR went live. So this wasn't the long con of XZUtils. They opened a new GitHub account. They opened a PR. Yes, it was mostly actually helpful. So they did do that work. But they didn't do the whole let's gain the trust thing. And I just love how this paper ends up that it only took 2 lines of code. This wasn't some crazy malware that was polymorphic in the code cave or whatever the hell was going on with pirate software. But this was just 2 lines of code, grabbed a batch script, did some nasty stuff. So their tips to avoid this kind of stuff is obviously check the history of the contributors. That's not always going to be your best indicator because there are some threat actors out there that are currently, right now, building very legitimate histories so that they can use those accounts for threats in the future. But in this case, it probably should have set off an alarm. There was a brand new GitHub account. Obviously, check the dependencies, and then it says use some sort of tools. I don't know if Spectre Assure is maybe that's one of their tools that they're promoting. I'm not sure. But they're saying okay, SCA, right? Check the version numbers for vulnerabilities. But then also, maybe this is a brand new targeted attack to you that isn't a known vulnerability. You're going to want to make sure that you're monitoring for weird behavior, hey, all of a sudden my IDE just reached out to this server and grabbed a batch script. I'm curious if you've used like Little Snitch. I wonder if Little Snitch would have said, hey, VS Code's trying to reach out to this like file thing. I'm curious on that one because that's how I would have caught it. All right, so it's like the week of the supply chain vulnerability, it seems, right? So in every example I just showed you, traditional like security best practices of reviewing things, not installing weird things, not installing things that aren't verified, falling for phishing, falling for social engineering. You got your YubiKeys, keys, you got your two-factor, you got everything. You're doing all the security things right. Even your security team could have reviewed these apps before installation and approved them all, and then they turned into malware. We got to get this in our heads as like consumers of these apps. This is why attack surface matters. This is why like, hey, don't leave random apps on your phone that you're not using anymore. Don't leave random extensions installed that you're not using anymore. Those are attack surface. At some point, either someone can find a vulnerability in one of those things, or someone can purposefully plant malicious code, behavior, keyloggers, whatever it is in these things if you leave them around installed for a long period of time. Thank you very much. If you found this useful at all, hit all the YouTube buttons down below. I'm growing this new channel. I appreciate it a lot. Share it with your mom. Moms love me. Follow for more cybersecurity news.